Hello there and a very warm welcome to Mwanzo TV tonight. My name is Leangari. Today, indeed, a big announcement there in Kenya. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair Wafula Chebukati there giving a big announcement about the winner of the presidential election in Kenya. Of course, Kenya has been having its general election since last week, and today just being the culmination of the election and the big announcement, leaving so many people, so many other citizens across the country in bated breath, just waiting to hear who will be announced as the winner of the presidential race. Of course, if I can just mention, we saw that according to the IEBC chair who announced the results, of course, amid some bit of drama, you could call it. And we see there the Deputy President, William Ruto, Dr. William Ruto, who is currently the Deputy President of the country, Kenya, coming up to the top there with a 50.49%, where he was announced as the President-elect. And of course, there, Raila Odinga trailing right behind Deputy President William Ruto. Raila Odinga was also contesting for the presidential position there and came up with 48.8%. Of course, there were two other candidates, that's Wahiga Maore, who garnered a 0.23%. And of course, also Wajakoya George, popular for his manifesto supporting the, telling Kenyans that he supports the growth and the purchasing and selling of bang, or so to speak, in order to support the financial, muscle growth of the country, perhaps to take the country out of debt, as he often said. Wajakoya George garnered a 0.44% in this presidential race. Of course, again, if I can just mention Dr. William Ruto, who is the current Deputy President of Kenya, has been announced today as the President-elect, following the end, or rather the culmination of the general election in Kenya. Of course, there we saw quite a lot of things happening, and there has been mixed reaction across the country. Some people are happy about the announcement, about the win that has been announced regarding Dr. William Ruto coming to the top as the President-elect. Of course, like I've mentioned, in other areas of the country, some citizens are not really happy about the results. And I'll just mention some of the areas there, if my producer there can just show some of those pictures. There's been, like I've mentioned, mixed reactions, some celebratory mood being seen. And just different areas of the country, we have seen and we have witnessed celebrations, citizens. Of course, if I can just leave you to just take a look at some of those pictures, celebratory mood, like I've mentioned, across the country.
Wale ambao hawajakubaliana na matokeo haya, kuna sheria ambayo Wakenya wanafaa kufuata, wafuate koti, lakini Kenya tunahitaji kuwa na amani. Kwa hivyo tumefurahia matokeo ya siku ya leo na Wakenya wamefurahia. hawajakubaliana na matokeo haya. Kuna sheria ambayo Wakenya wanafaa kufuata, wafuate koti, lakini Kenya tunahitaji kuwa na amani. Kwa hivyo tumefurahia matokeo ya siku ya leo na Wakenya wamefurahia na hatutaki.
Indeed, many Kenyans across the country at this moment just in celebratory mood after the announcement of Dr. William Ruto, who is the current deputy president of the country, being announced by the IEBC, Kenya's electoral body, as the president-elect, following the general election that has been ongoing since last week. Of course, mixed reactions, like I mentioned. Some people are quite happy and in celebratory mood, like I've mentioned, regarding the win of William Ruto. But of course, also, where there's winners, there's also losers. And across the country, there's also some people who have come out very strongly, citizens saying that they are not happy with the results. They do not feel that perhaps they were fair, the results rather were fair in their view. And I'll just have us look at what was happening in Kisumu County, where, of course, Azimio leader there,
Baba, tunawawa. Tunawawa baba.
Sawa, pita wasikupige sasa.
Tunawawa. Baba tunawawa.
It's very important.
Sasa baba. Kiaga ndio hii. Baba tunawawa.
Sawa barashi.
Tunawawa baba.
Sawa, pita wasikupige sasa.
Tunawawa. Baba tunawawa.
Life is very important.
Done.
In the pictures there, quite the opposite of some of the celebratory mood we have been seeing across some of the counties in Kenya following the announcement of Dr. William Ruto as the president-elect following the general election that has been going on since last week in Kenya. And of course, there are pictures just in Kisumu County where residents were not too happy. Riots did erupt in that particular county, and Kenyans across the country, a section of them, are not too happy with the results, and some have expressed the feeling that perhaps the general election rather was not, in their view, a fair process. And of course, just to mention there has been concerns, and we need to, of course, just mention that 4 out of the 7 commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission have disowned the results of the August 9th presidential election. And of course, earlier on in the day, addressing the media ahead of the announcement of the results, the 4 commissioners led by IEBC Vice Chair Juliana Cherera said the last phase of the electoral process, which is verification of results, was not transparent. And of course, this is something that Dr. William Ruto has been very, very categorical to say that in his view, the electoral process, the election process rather, was transparent. I want us to have a look at some of the pictures there right after the announcement of his win. Dr. William Ruto there, we were able to just catch him with some of the other presidential candidates who sadly did not manage to garner enough votes.
You are Hindu, isn't it?
I wish Kenya was like this. Mahali watu wanashikana mkono. Wengine wanaona mtaani.
You are Hindu, isn't it?
I wish Kenya was like this. Mahali watu wanashikana mkono. Wengine wanaona mtaani. Why should people fight each other?
Yeah, is your supporter.
Konayo kidogo
I should have come to you for tutorial.
wasted 3 months.
No. 3 months. Yeah. But there is a day.
You are Hindu, isn't it?
I wish Kenya was like this. Mahali watu wanashikana mkono. Wengine wanaona mtaani. Why should people fight each other?
Yeah, is your supporter.
Konayo kidogo
I should have come to you for tutorial. Wasted 3 months.
Where we saw that shops were closed very early on, as many of the citizens wanted to be home to hear the big announcement on who will become their next president. And like I've mentioned, Dr. William Ruto has been announced today as the president-elect of Kenya. And again, I just need to reiterate there, of course, that announcement did not come with, feelings of celebration for some. And of course, there has been a lot of discontentment within some of the supporters of the Azimio party, which was fielding a candidate who has a trail behind, and this being Raila Odinga, who was able to garner 48.8% against Dr. William Ruto, who has been declared winner, who was able to garner 50.49%. And just to mention there, we did see earlier on Dr. IEBC chair addressing the media earlier on and saying that he did see that, and in his announcement he said Ruto had fulfilled the constitutional requirements after garnering the votes that he did garner, representing 50.49% of the total votes cast, and as he also stated, he achieved the minimum number of personal candidates at 25%. That was also hard earlier on, and really that some of that press release that he made on live television, that's all that broadcast as a media. But just to mention some of the things, Michael, you can tell me.
I invite the President-elect to come forward and receive his certificate. And of course, the president-elect had a running mate. Rigathi Gachagua is the deputy president-elect. Thank you. I invite the president-elect to make his remarks. I invite the President-elect to come forward and receive his certificate. And of course, the president-elect had a running mate. Rigathi Gachagua is the deputy president-elect. Thank you. I invite the president-elect to make his remarks.
Distinguished God for getting us to this point we have concluded this election, that I won't get to the ballot.
I invite the President-elect to come forward and receive his certificate.
What a day it was in Kenya today as the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that's Kenya's electoral body, announced the President-elect, which is in this case Dr. William Ruto. And this following a general election in Kenya that has been going on since last week. Like I mentioned earlier on, Dr. William Ruto was able to garner 50.49%, trailed behind by Azimio party presidential hopeful, which is Raila Odinga, who came right behind him with 48.8%. Of course, other two candidates, Wahiga Maore there, garnered 0.23%, and Wajakoya George garnered 0.44%. Of course, earlier on, we did speak to an analyst who was speaking to our news anchor, Victor Wanaswa, and the feeling there being that the reaction by some of the IEBC officials may be spelling out perhaps a legal battle, which we don't know yet. But what the analyst said earlier on right here on Mwanzo TV is that this would likely be the case. But yet we have to wait and see what will come out of the announcement today. And just to touch a little bit on this, earlier on, we did realize and learn that even as the announcement came from the IEBC, there was also new developments emerging with the announcement, where it was said and announced that 4 out of the 7 commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, have disowned the results of the August 9th presidential election in Kenya. And addressing the media earlier on ahead of the announcement of the results, the 4 commissioners led by IEBC Vice Chair Juliana Cherera said the phase of the electoral process, which is verification of results, was not transparent. And these are sentiments that have come from the IEBC Vice Chair, of course, eliciting mixed reactions as a result from the different parts of the country in terms of the citizens and their reactions. And of course, within the Azimio party, which had fielded its own presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, some of the members of the party coming out strongly saying that they did not feel that the election was transparent. Of course, the sentiments that were echoed there by the 4 commissioners led by the IEBC Vice Chair Juliana Cherera, who said the last phase of the electoral process, which is verification of results, was not transparent. Of course, these are allegations that we'll be following up for you in the coming days, just to be able to see what will be unfolding in Kenya. Like I've mentioned earlier on, our anchor there talking to an analyst, the feeling, and of course, just looking at social media, of course, and listening to some of the things that many of the members of the Azimio party have been saying there, the feeling that there was a sense of the election rather not being transparent. We did see some drama, of course, emerging earlier on in the day, and a lot of anxiety building up amongst Kenyans, and of course even within the Bomas of Kenya, where the announcement of the results, and of course counting was, of course, also of results that were coming from various polling stations. There was a lot of anxiety building up, a lot of waiting. Earlier on, the IEBC chair had indicated he will be making the announcement at a particular time. The time was moved a little bit forward and later moved to a later time. But finally, the announcement did come, but coming amidst, what has seemed like division between the commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. That's Kenya's electoral body. 4 out of the 7 commissioners of the IEBC coming out and saying that they have disowned the results of the presidential election that just ended in Kenya. Again, I need to mention that the IEBC chair, who was seen earlier on, if my producer can just have some of those pictures there, Wafula Chebukati did say earlier on that that Ruto, who has been announced today as the president-elect, had fulfilled the constitutional requirements after garnering the votes that he did garner, representing 0.49% of the total votes cast, and he achieved, according to what Chebukati said, that Ruto achieved the minimum number of 39 counties at 25%. I'm not sure if my producer can just show us earlier pictures of Ruto there receiving certificates, and a certificate which is what we saw earlier on at the Bomas of Kenya, where the big announcement of the winner of the presidential race was made by the IEBC chair. And of course, just to mention, other than the announcement, after the announcement rather, like we showed you pictures there earlier on, there was a lot of celebratory mood in the country, across the country, and of course just a section of celebrations going all the way to Kiambu County, Eldoret, Tharaka Nithi, and just various counties in the country, and of course Nyeri County, which was also key. And of course also just looking at those pictures, it tells you that indeed Kenyans have been waiting for these announcements, and just looking at the reactions there, and if you can just listen into what some of those Kenyans had to say.
Lakini Kenya tunahitaji kuwa na amani. Kwa hivyo tumefurahia matokeo ya siku ya leo, na Wakenya wamefurahia, na hatutaki shinda.
Indeed, pictures there of Kenyans celebrating across the country there after the announcement of Dr. William Ruto as the president-elect made earlier on by the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati. Just moving on, I know we do want to get just to hear what Dr. William Ruto had to say. We'll be bringing that to you in a moment. But just to mention some of the things that we did witness right here in Mwanzo TV as we covered the election in Kenya. Of course, it was one-of-a-kind election. And we did hear observers, national, international rather, and even regional observers talking about the process seeming to be peaceful. There was really not much of what you would call drama or fracas just emerging in the country. The election process, of course, also reported by observers as being a peaceful election. Of course, also not to forget, there were, of course, some hiccups here and there regarding ballot papers. Some ballot papers were seen to have been delivered to the wrong destinations and just in a few of the counties. And of course, not forgetting the electronic system there had a bit of a challenge where the IEBC officials who were manning the polling stations and of course just carrying out the whole process and helping Kenyans cast their vote, it was seen that in some counties they had to resort to the manual process of carrying out the voting. And of course, just those challenges that emerge in some of the counties. And just in one thing you may also notice, especially with the Kenyan election, this particular time, it's been peaceful. And for the first time, we did see quite a number of candidates conceding defeat. And this is not something that has been very, very common in the Kenyan scene as far as elections are concerned. And I do want my producer to just play one of those videos there we had of candidates who did end up conceding defeat. And this, of course, not being an easy thing to do, but it has been commended very much so across the country and, of course, by international and regional observers as being an example of how an election should be handled when losers become losers and winners become winners. Of course, not to forget, even as I wait for my producer to get that clip, I do understand we have it. Just like I've mentioned, let's just listen in on some of the candidates who did concede defeat during the election that began last week in Kenya and has...
Members in Dewa was cut to pieces, is dead. Another one in Game here was cut to pieces and is dead. Yesterday, women in Shauriako were being beaten, were being caned with people who were on 4 black Prados, 150s, and yet the police could not do anything.
It is, however, sad to note that gubernatorial elections in Awendo, Rongo, and in Tumaru in Kuria East became a sham, just as in parts of Suna West and Suna East. While we would not want to give details at this particular moment, we wish to put those involved in notice that we will be taking legal actions to ensure that Migori people and the whole world understand that a mandate cannot be grabbed illegally.
We noticed quite a number of irregularities across the board during this election. At the polling stations, it was clear that a number of presiding officers had chosen to take sides. Objections that were put by our teams were not taken into account. One of the candidates, our opponent, stormed the tallying centers in the middle of the night, intimidating people counting, and none of
video there showing some of the candidates from the just concluded election, general election in Kenya, stating that they had conceded defeat. Like I've mentioned, this is not something that has been very much a case in Kenyan election where we see candidates conceding defeat, but this time around quite a number of candidates who did not manage to garner enough votes to secure a win for themselves came out and indicated the decision to concede defeat as a result of not being able to garner the number of votes that they needed to garner so that they can actually clinch the various positions they were running for. We do know, of course, also there was a win for women. Quite a number of women there clinching different positions, especially in Nakuru County. Exemplary, reports there of women who have made it to the top as governors, as senators, and of course as women reps, and quite an interesting affair there, especially given that there has been a spirited movement, especially amongst women parliamentarians, to ensure that there is enough representation of women in parliament in Kenya. This being definitely a development, and for many across the country, the feeling has been this is a great development towards having more women in parliament, in government in Kenya, and representing the electorate. I know we'll be having just a clip of that list of women who have been able to clinch the various positions they ran for, from governors to senators and women reps, and I do know my producer will be playing that for you. But if I can just reiterate tonight's live update, we are looking at the announcement by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair, Wafula Chebukati, who earlier on in the day announced Dr. William Ruto, who is Kenya's current Deputy President, as the President-elect, having garnered what the IEBC said was 50.49%. Of course, his strong contender there, trailing behind Raila Odinga of the Azimio Party there, garnering 48.8%. And of course, two other candidates there who are also running for the presidential seat, Waihiga Maure, who garnered 0.23%, and Wajakura George, who garnered 3.44%. I need to mention, of course, like I said earlier on, this announcement did not come with celebration from all quarters. And of course, there is, speculation from analysts across the country that there would likely be, a petition filed in court contesting against the announcement, the results that were announced earlier on by the IEBC chair. This, of course, having to do with 4 out of, also just having to do with 4 out of the 7 commissioners of the IEBC having disowned the results of the presidential election. Addressing the media, of course, earlier on, ahead of the announcement of the results, we did see the 4 commissioners led by the IEBC Vice Chair Juliana Cherera saying that the last phase of the electoral process, which is verification of results, was not transparent. Of course, this is not a sentiment that everyone has come out sharing. Of course, those in support of the Deputy President, William Ruto, and his the party, Kwanza, they did feel that there was a transparency in this particular election. Of course, in the coming days, it's a wait-and-see situation, really, just to see what exactly will result from the announcement, and the feeling and speculation by many that perhaps some may head to court to petition, or rather also challenge, the presidential election results that have been announced today. And just to give you context here, we do know and did see earlier on, and we did report on this as Mwanzo TV, that Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, Saitabao Ole Kanchuri, was seen there, implying that the systems used by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that's the IEBC, to tally the results of the presidential contest were compromised, according to him, allegedly compromised, ahead of the official announcement by the electoral body. Well, this claims, we are yet to hear more about these claims from the Azimio la Umoja party presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, Saitabao Ole Kanchuri, and it's definitely, like I mentioned, a wait-and-see situation where in the coming days, and of course tomorrow, it is expected perhaps there may be press conferences to shed more light into these allegations. Also, just reiterating, of course, also what Kanchuri there was seen to say is that, and speaking at the Bomas of Kenya on Monday today, Kanchuri was quoted as citing intelligence reports as the reason that informed their claims, going as far as saying that some IEBC officials allegedly actively colluded with the perpetrators of the alleged cyber attack to compromise the presidential polls. This reports, of course, we cannot verify these allegations at this moment until we can hear more from Kanchuri, the Azimio la Umoja party. And of course, like I've mentioned, it is expected in the coming days, perhaps even as soon as tomorrow, there will be probably press conferences to address the media on these allegations. Just to mention a little bit more, of course, following the announcement, given that there were some counties in Kenya that were very much in a celebratory mood, in Kisumu County, however, what was witnessed is riots. Citizens in Kisumu County, and of course also some other counties there, are not a happy lot following the announcement, the feeling being that the election process to them was not transparent, and the results, as a result, in their view, not credible. If we can just have those pictures there, a little bit of what we saw there were riots and youth just running across Kisumu County there, expressing their dissatisfaction with the announcement, the results of the announcement of the results by the IEBC chair earlier on.
Life is very important. Tony.
Sasa baba, kiaga ndio hii baba, tunawawa.
Sawa Barashi.
Tunawawa baba.
Sawa, pita wasikupige sasa.
Tunawawa. Baba tunawawa.
Pictures there earlier on of Kisumu County, which is one of Raila Odinga, the Azimio party presidential candidate. That is one of his strongholds, especially in most of the elections, actually all the elections, of course, including this one. And there seems residents of Kisumu County, they're not really happy regarding the announcement that was made earlier on by the IEBC chair, indicating that Dr. William Ruto had emerged as the winner and therefore the president-elect of Kenya at this moment. And of course, like I mentioned just a moment ago, that there were sentiments from the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, Saiteba Ole Kanchuri, who implied that the systems used by the IEBC to tally the results of the presidential contest were allegedly compromised. Of course, allegations we hope to see perhaps being made clear in the days. Just to mention there, of course, President-elect in this case, Dr. William Ruto, of course, on the other hand, now claims that there were attempts to interfere with the presidential election outcome at the Bomas of Kenya. Ruto speaking in a joint sit-down earlier on with multiple media houses after he was announced winner of the presidential election by Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair Wafula Chebukati, said the alleged events will soon come to light. And he, however, also seemingly intimated that the efforts were thwarted, further seeking to allay fears among the electorate of the alleged existence of a shadow government dubbed the deep state, or the system that manipulates elections. And deep state in this case, quote unquote, and system, of course, also quote unquote. The Kenya Kwanza chief, in this case, Dr. William Ruto, expressed confidence, of course, as seen earlier on, especially when he was right after he received the certificate confirming his election as president-elect. He expressed confidence in the validity of his election, urging those with a contrary opinion to present before the Supreme Court. And this after 4 IEBC commissioners, as earlier mentioned on this live broadcast, held a press release rather, in which they disowned the results of the presidential election, saying the last phase of the process was allegedly not transparent. And just pictures there, of course, of Dr. William Ruto right after the announcement, just interacting there with some of the presidential candidates there, George Wajakoya, who garnered 0.44%, and Wahiga Maora there, who garnered 0.23%. Looking quite elated there, a happy man he is today. That's earlier on, like I've mentioned.
But there's a day. You're Hindu, yeah.
I wish Kenya was like this.
Yeah.
Why should people fight each other?
Here is your supporter.
I should have come to you for tutorials. I've wasted 3 months. No. 3 months.
Yeah. But there's a day. You're Hindu, yeah.
I wish Kenya was like this.
Yeah.
Why should people fight each other?
Here is your supporter.
I should have come to you for tutorials. I've wasted 3 months. No.
3 months. Yeah. But there's a day. You're Hindu, yeah.
I wish Kenya was like this.
Yeah.
Ruto William Samoei.
And those pictures there, of course, being of Dr. William Ruto there, just interacting with some of the presidential candidates who did not, of course, as you have seen earlier on, manage to clinch their presidential seat there. And just mentioning some of the details, the developments following the announcement there, like I mentioned, Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, Saitaba Ole Kanturi, implying that the systems used by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to tally the results of the presidential contest were compromised ahead of the official announcement by the electoral body. And just to mention some of the things that we have witnessed here in Kenya, as we have been reporting on the elections in Kenya, and of course, just
Ruto William Samoei,
we did see quite
number
a number
of valid votes,
of Kenyans coming out
7 million.
happy. But I just want us to listen on what the IEBC chair of Elected Party had to say earlier on during the announcement of Dr. William Ruto as president-elect.
Thank you. 7,176,141. This represents 50.49%. And he achieved the minimum number of 39 counties at 25%. So, in accordance with the law, the Constitution and the law, I, Wafula Chebukati, Chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, hereby declares that Ruto William Samoei of ID number 6847208 has been duly elected as the President of the Republic of Kenya under the provisions of Article 138 of the Constitution in the presidential election held on 9th day of August 2022. And I'll proceed to sign the certificate.
Habari njema kwa Wakenya wote, tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka. isiyoegemea upande wowote.
Of course, pictures there of the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati, announcing the president-elect of Kenya, which in this case is Dr. William Ruto. And that was earlier on, pictures earlier on of the Bomas of Kenya, where the national tallying has been ongoing. And of course, the announcement of the president-elect was made at the Bomas of Kenya earlier on. A celebratory mood, of course, was very rife in the Bomas of Kenya, especially for those who have been having a spirited support of the deputy president, who is now the president-elect, and in this case, Dr. William Ruto. As I mentioned earlier on, Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, Saitaba Ole Kanturi, has implied the systems used by the IEBC to tally the results of the presidential contest were allegedly compromised ahead of the announcement by the electoral body. And this is something that the Kwanza party, of which the president-elect hails from, has dispelled as not being true, claiming that the election was actually transparent. And in this regard, the announcement also being announcement in their view. And of course, just to mention, earlier on, like I've mentioned, Ole Kanturi there cited intelligence reports as the reason that informed their claims, going as far as saying that some IEBC officials actively colluded
the members of my team.
I want us to listen in on what Dr. William Ruto, who is now the president-elect of Kenya, and of course the current deputy president of the country, had to say earlier on, right after the announcement of his win.
And many other prayer warriors in Kenya. And I want to confess that I have been prayed into victory. Thank the members of my team, starting with my wife and family. And many other prayer warriors in Kenya. And I want to confess that I have been prayed into victory. It is not our effort. And my team knows. We were working against the odds, many odds at that. But I must confess that it is God who brought us this victory. I do not want to mention the many people, many friends who have been part and parcel of this journey. Many people have paid huge sacrifices for us to get here. I want to promise them that their sacrifice will not be in vain. I and my team and I will work very hard to make sure that we don't let the sacrifices made by many Kenyans, we don't let them down. I am very confident that this country will come together and we can move forward as one united, democratic, and prosperous.
Kenya's deputy, we apologize for that bit of a sound challenge there, but that was Kenya's deputy president, Dr. William Ruto, who is now the president-elect, right after the announcement of his win there, addressing the nation, citing gratefulness to those who stood with him throughout this election process. Of course, Dr. William Ruto there was also heard mentioning that he does plan to work very closely with the media fraternity in the country there. and of course also expressing that those with a contrary opinion towards the announcement of his win should present their grievances before the Supreme Court. I'd like us to listen in a little bit more on some of the other comments that he had to make.
Let me also say right at the start that in here and in this election, there are no losers. The people of Kenya have won because we have raised the political bar. I want to say that the people of Kenya, led by the 14 million who turned up to vote, are the biggest winners. The hero of this election is the IEBC, led by Wafula Chebukati. I say this with conviction that the IEBC amazed all of us. With the results in the public portal, all the servers were open. And everybody, all you needed is a simple calculator, and you would have the results. I want to congratulate the IEBC for raising the bar. And I want to say, without fear of any contradiction, that one Wafula Chebukati is our hero. Soft-spoken, but firm. And I want to tell you, Mr. Chairman, we are very proud that without informing any one of us, you put all the results from all the polling stations on a public portal where any Kenyan could access. That became the game changer in this election. Let me also, at this point in time, thank our partners, the religious leaders, who were part of this process right from the beginning. For the first time, we saw religious leaders spend time at this Starling Center and prayed for this process. I am sure their prayers will not be in vain. I also want to thank our development partners, our diplomatic community, and all the observers who came in their thousands to be part and parcel of the process right from almost 2 weeks ago to its conclusion in this auditorium. To all of them, I tell them the people of Kenya are eternally grateful that you took your time, valuable time, to watch over this process so that the right thing can happen.
There are pictures of Kenya's Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto there, who is now the announced president-elect of the country, addressing the media after his announcement as the winner of the presidential race in Kenya. Of course, Kenya has been conducting its general election since last week, of course, for various positions there, from governors, senators, and many others, women representatives. And of course, like I mentioned earlier on, women have quite, emerged as lead in various positions, which has not been the case in previous elections in Kenya. Quite a win for women there, seeing especially in Nakuru County, where we did see quite a number of women there clinch some of the seats and emerging victorious, and really telling many women in the country that it is possible for women to be able to clinch various seats. Of course, Kenya's parliament has, and we've seen this over the years, women have been holding, women parliamentarians in this case, and of course women from other sectors in the country have been holding a spirited movement there to ensure that women representation in parliament is brought to a greater level. And of course, it's not been an easy journey for many of those women, but in this particular election, it definitely creates what one could call hope for women to clinch more positions in Kenya's parliament. I do want to mention, of course, the announcement of Dr. William Ruto as president-elect was not received with jubilation by everyone. And of course, early on pictures there of different citizens across the country in jubilation, but some, as seen in Kisumu County, there was what was witnessed in terms of riots. I do also want to just reiterate that Azimio La Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's chief agent, and this being cited by Ole Kanchuri, implied the systems used by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to tally the results of the presidential contest were allegedly compromised ahead of the official announcement of the electoral body. Raila Odinga was definitely Dr. William Ruto's strongest contender, who trailed behind Dr. William Ruto with 48.8%, whereby William Ruto himself had 50.49%, and the two other presidential candidates there were Higa Maure, who garnered 0.23%, and Wajakoya George, who garnered 0.44%. I need to mention that in case the Azimio La Umoja party or anyone would desire to contest the results according to the process that would be legally available to them, is that a petition challenging the presidential election results should be filed within 7 days from the declaration of the results by IEBC. Now, according to the Supreme Court, the petition will then be determined 14 days from the day it was filed. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, our anchor here at Mwanzo TV, Victor Onaso, did manage to speak to one of the analysts here in Kenya, and he made it clear that perhaps, you know, with the announcement of the results and already sentiments coming out that the results were not coming from a credible election, with allegations rather of the process not being transparent emerging, the sentiments here from different analysts in the country and of course across the region is there would be likely a petition filed to challenge the presidential election results. I need to also mention and just reiterate, as I said earlier on, 4 out of the 7 commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission have disowned the results of the August 9th presidential election in Kenya. Addressing the media ahead of the announcement of the results, we did see earlier on the 4 commissioners led by the IEBC Vice Chair, Juliana Cherera, saying the last phase of the electoral process, which is verification of results, was not transparent. And this is definitely allegations that we hope to hear a little bit more, of course, as the media fraternity, expecting perhaps there will be a likelihood of press conferences emerging perhaps tomorrow and in the coming days, especially with these allegations of the transparency of the electoral process not being really evident for some. I do want to mention, of course, Martha Karua, who was a running mate of the Azimio La Umoja presidential candidate there, Raila Odinga, came out very strongly on social media on her Twitter page, saying that in her view and in her words, that it was really not over. And just speaking there earlier on different social media platforms, we have seen different candidates and really not everyone is in jubilation, and some coming out strongly and saying that, you know, making just assertions there that would likely sound like there may be perhaps, you know, an intention to petition, to file a petition rather, challenging the presidential election results. And indeed, it has been a very interesting affair right here in Kenya, as we have been covering the election here in Kenya. As Mwanzo TV, we have witnessed quite a number of interesting events there, entertaining. Some of them have been quite entertaining, by the way. Kenyans turning up at polling stations, dressed in towels, and towels alone, by the way. And of course, others who hope to skip the line, the long queues, they were carrying dolls, teddy bears in this case, and covering them with, so to speak, kangas or lessers, or if you'd like, they had something they were covering the dolls with to imply that perhaps they were carrying babies so that they would manage to skip the line during the queues of different Kenyans who had come out to vote in this particular election. Quite entertaining pictures there, and some of them even appearing at the polling stations, queuing and eating bread, and perhaps they were just hungry. They were hungry, and they wanted to make sure that if we were going to stay on the queue, we better just carry enough food to keep us going and strong enough to remain in the queues. Pictures there again of some of the events and the different activities that we were able to witness as Mwanzo TV, during the election that just concluded in Kenya. Like I've mentioned, and you can see there, some of them carrying dolls. They were actually caught, and others turning up in towels. I mean, can you imagine? Take a look. Pictures there, like I mentioned, of just some of the entertaining scenes that we did witness as Mwanzo TV as we were covering the election right here in Kenya. And of course, like you see there, different Kenyans standing up in just basically towels alone, others standing up with loaves of bread in the queues, perhaps to keep themselves going and keep strong, And others, of course, like you've seen there, carrying teddy bears and covering and pretending perhaps they were babies so that they can manage to skip the line. Of course, it's not an easy thing to do there, queuing for perhaps long hours to be able to cast your vote. But what is really exemplary, of course, as seen within Kenya from the citizens, is just the design commitment to cast their vote to elect their preferred candidates. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It has been very, very much exciting just covering the election. Of course, remember, Mwanzo TV is definitely at the forefront, making sure that we bring you wall-to-wall coverage of everything that is happening in Kenya, especially as far as the election that just concluded. Of course, like I mentioned, the announcement of Dr. William Ruto as president-elect has been received with great jubilation across sections of the country.
William Samoei.
For those who did not manage to get their preferred candidate as the winner, the president-elect in this case, of course, just expressing sentiments that they felt that allegedly, as they stated, the process, the election process may not have been entirely transparent in their view. And of course, we'll just want to leave you there with some of the pictures earlier on of Dr. William Ruto receiving his certificate upon the announcement of his win as president-elect of Kenya. Thank you for watching. My name is Leangari. Until tomorrow, have a good night and God bless.
Ruto William Samoei. Number of valid votes, 7 million. Thank you. 7,176,141. This represents 50.49%. And he achieved the minimum number of 39 counties at 25%. So, in accordance with the law, the Constitution and the law, I, Wafula Chebukati, Chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, hereby declares that Ruto William Samoei of ID number 6847208 has been duly elected as the President of the Republic of Kenya under the provisions of Article 138 of the Constitution in the presidential election held on 9th of day of August 2022. And I'll proceed to sign the certificate.
Habari njema kwa Wakenya wote, tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka isiyoegemea